This week on The Breakout, on-the-ground reporting from the NATO summit. Welcome to The Breakout. I'm Aaron Mehta. Last week, the leaders of the 32 NATO nations gathered in The Hague for the annual meeting where they discussed the future of the alliance. Our Michael Marrow was on the ground and filed this report.
My name is Michael Marrow, Breaking Defense's air warfare reporter. I'm coming to you from the second and final day of the NATO summit held here at the Wolf Forum at The Hague. Just wanted to run through a few quick things that were really the highlight of the summit this year. The first and the biggest one was a pledge by NATO, all countries, with some exceptions, to spend 5% of their GDP on defense by 2035. Now, I said some exceptions because there was a notable holdout, and that was Spain, which drew some pretty sharp criticism from President Trump and other NATO leaders too. We're sympathetic to Spain's position, but they ultimately said that this is an obligation that the entire alliance has to meet. And really it reflected kind of the geographic divisions within NATO. The chair of the NATO Military Committee actually said here yesterday, if you look at spending by country, it's the countries that are closer to the front line with Russia that are ramping up, whereas, maybe countries like Spain farther away don't feel that pressure. So that was definitely a point of contention here at the NATO summit. Slovakia has also expressed some kind of ambiguity about meeting that pledge, but that didn't really merit as much discussion here as Spain. A second big topic of this conference was Article 5. That's NATO's collective defense pact, which means an attack on one is an attack on all. It really is the key clause in the NATO treaty. And on his way to the summit here yesterday, actually, President Trump appeared to kind of equivocate on Article 5, saying there are numerous definitions. But when Trump arrived here today, he had kind of a change of tune. He said this morning in a briefing with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte that, quote, we're with them all the way when it comes to NATO. And later on at a press conference here I attended with the president, he said, I looked at European leaders and I saw that they really want to defend their countries. And it really seemed to kind of resonate with him. A final topic here, but one that was under discussed, was Ukraine. At past summits, the defense of Ukraine has been really a leading theme here. It's the reason why NATO wants to ramp up defense spending. President Volodymyr Zelensky was here, and he did speak, but his presence was a little bit more toned down. The allied members here, NATO heads of state, almost uniformly, especially in Europe, pledged their commitment to Ukraine, and the alliance signed a joint declaration supporting Ukraine's defense. But this is definitely something to watch going forward, especially the United States' support for Kyiv. At Trump's press conference today, he said, he was asked, is the United States going to commit more money for Ukraine this year? And he said, quote, we'll see. But I think a key change is that the president seemed to kind of soften his position. Before, he was much tougher on Ukraine. Today, he said directly that Vladimir Putin needs to end this war. So going forward, this is definitely something to watch. But as a whole in this NATO summit, leaders were probably privately worrying about a couple things. That 5% pledge, and whether Trump, could disrupt the summit somehow with, maybe this kind of equivocation on Article 5. But at the end of the day, the alliance seemed to project more unity than maybe some feared would be possible. So going forward, definitely a thing to keep a close eye on is how exactly Europe is going to ramp up its defense spending and what it's going to be spent on. Secretary General Rutte did talk about some needs, especially ammunition, especially air defenses, and that will create a lot of opportunities for the European defense industry here, as well as American companies trying to get in on the action. So, obviously Breaking Defense is going to keep a close eye on that, and stay tuned for more coverage.
After the break, you'll hear directly from NATO leaders about that big defense spending increase.
At Leonardo DRS, our agility helps bring the ability to dominate in any scenario, on any platform, helping our warfighters accomplish the mission and get home safely. Leonardo DRS, our agility, your advantage.
The big takeaway from the NATO summit was the decision to push for 5% of GDP spending on defense. Except that number is a little misleading. It's really 3.5% on pure defense and 1.5% on national security, which is a broad definition. Still, it was a big move and it certainly seemed to appease President Trump. Let's hear directly from some of the defense leaders involved in these discussions.
These are difficult decisions, let's be honest. I mean, politicians have to make choices in scarcity. And this is not easy because 7, 8 countries at the start of this year not at 2%. They will now reach the 2% this year. That given us threat from the Russians, given the international security situation, there is no alternative. We've got to do this.
We are 32 countries of the group, and we have different approaches. We have different geographical proximity to the battlefields and to the front line. And this is understandable that some countries have different approach, and then we have to find a compromise, which is pretty difficult to find. But we did it.
What signal does it send to the Kremlin, though? I mean, if they know you can't agree even to call Russia the aggressor.
I think it's bad news for them.
I hope it will be an historic day for the reinforcement of the Power Alliance and strengthening our defense and our defense. I think it's absolutely necessary to make sure that we share the burden more financially, but also in our military tasks.
That's it for this week. Make sure to like and subscribe to The Breakout to get us delivered directly to you. And if you're a podcast fan, make sure to search Breaking Defense on your podcast service of choice. Thanks for watching. I'm Aaron Mehta.